Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Matty and this is my official UFC 262 main event preview between Charles Oliveira, wrong way around, and Michael Chandler. So, we're going to break this show down into a few segments, but first off, I just want to ask you guys, please, if you like these videos, please leave a like, leave a comment. I want to start doing more of them. They're obviously not going to replace the podcast in any way, but when you're on a podcast with two people who have extensive knowledge, like I do in mixed martial arts and combat sports, not every point that I want to get across gets covered. So this is kind of my way to put all the knowledge that I have out there for you guys and go on a little bit of longer diatribes than I usually do on the podcast. So, like I said, I'm going to break this down into several categories. If you see me kind of look across, I'm just looking at my notes here. I've got a lot of notes on this fight. This is a really good fight. So, we're going to split it up. First off, I'm going to list each competitor's last 5 fights. Then I'm going to give my first thoughts, my first opinions of this fight and how it might go. Then we're going to break it up into 3 different what I call levels, which is level 1, where the fight begins on the feet, the striking. Level 2, the grappling, when it hits the mat, which is actually where I think most of this fight is going to get played out. And level 3, other integers such as athleticism, experience, toughness, things like that. And then I'll give my final thoughts and predictions at the end. So please watch the whole video. Don't just skip right through to the end for the final thoughts and predictions. My goal is to educate someone who may not be as into the sport as me, but these fights coming up are at such a high level. I really want to demonstrate my knowledge, and hopefully someone will watch and be like, "Holy shit, that sounds really cool! Like these guys sound really fucking good." So, and they'll check them out. So let's begin with the last 5 fights of both opponents. Charles Oliveira, we are looking at a decision win, a decisive decision win over Tony Ferguson, a guillotine submission victory over Kevin Lee, a KO victory over Jared Gordon, a TKO victory over Nick Lentz, and also an Anaconda choke victory over David Tamer, someone who I was very, very high on at one point. Um, kind of fallen off the train for David Tamer a little bit, but at one point I was pretty damn high on David Tamer's hype train. And now let's look at Michael Chandler. His last fight was the early first round stoppage of Dan Hooker via TKO. Then before that, he knocked out former UFC lightweight champion Benson Henderson. Before that, he knocked out Sydney Outlaw. Before that, he had a loss via TKO to Patricky Pitbull. And then before that, he KO'd Brent Primus. So looking at these two, um, I would say that Oliveira has fought the stiffer competition in his last 5 fights. Dan Hooker didn't really do anything other than feint in Michael Chandler's last fight. This is not to discredit anyone. Um, Benson Henderson has not been the Benson Henderson that I grew up watching as of late. Uh, Sydney Outlaw, again, uh, if you compare the names that I just read out, there's quite a disparity between the two. The loss to Pitbull, I mean, Pitbull's an absolute beast. Pitbull's on a fucking tear right now. So, um, uh, you know, that's nothing to be like, you lost to Pitbull. That's, that that'll happen. As I like to say on the podcast, that'll happen. So let's start with level 1, which is the striking. This is where the fight begins. It always starts on the feet, unless you're in jiu-jitsu, and then obviously, you can, it can go straight to the mat. And then, okay, so level 1. Michael Chandler's strength when it comes to the striking is he's very good at getting in and out of range because of his wide wrestling stance. He is so low to the ground. You never know what's coming, if it's going to be a strike or if he's just going to shoot for the takedown because he keeps that low wrestling stance. So you never know what's going to come from him. He is heavy on his lead leg though. So that that could be dealt with by the Muay Thai striking of Charles Oliveira with the low kicks, And especially if you're fighting someone like Charles Oliveira, who is not afraid to be taken down, he could just eat away at that lead leg. And if Chandler catches a leg kick and takes him down, he's not going to be too worried about it. With Michael Chandler, though, it's never the first shot that you should be afraid of. It's always the second and the first. My striking coach always told me not every shot has to knock you out. Not every shot has to be a perfect, clean knockout shot. And with Michael Chandler, that is the exact strategy that he likes to take. It's never the 1-2. It's the overhand that comes behind it. It's the left hook that he's gotten really good at throwing. It's always the second or the third strike you got to watch out with Michael Chandler. And as I said, he keeps his base so low that you never know when an overhand's gonna come, because you think that he's diving in for a single leg or an overhand's coming over. So you never really. It's very tricky. It's kind of like Habib in a way. You never know when Habib is gonna shoot for you or when he's gonna throw that fucking eagle punch. Um, like I said, when he has you pressured, when Michael Chandler has you pressured, it's kind of a pick your poison. As I said about the stance being so low, he's either going to shoot on you or fire 2 or 3 shots. And when he has you pressured and pinned against the fence, you don't know where to go, because like you're either going to run onto a punch or you're going to get taken down. So Oliveira, he keeps himself quite high and he walks quite tall and has his chin quite high in the air. So he's got to use angles and footwork here. He can't just walk. And I guarantee you, this is what he's going to try and do. He's going to try and walk Michael Chandler down, and it's going to be the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. They're going to meet in the middle, and one of them's going to go down. But it's not the head strikes that I'm worried about when it comes to Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira. It's the body shots. Especially if you're that low, it's easier just to. And especially with Michael Chandler, he's so good at getting from point A to point B, from point A to point B, and then back to point A, that he could land a body hook without being in danger of eating a knee or eating an elbow to come down. When you're fighting a Muay Thai striker and you want to land a body hook, never, ever, ever dip down like a boxer. Never, never, never do that, because then you are opening yourself up to elbows, to knees. The way that I saw Liam Harrison, who taught this way to do it, and it's kind of how I've drilled it into my brain to do when throwing a left hook, is to feint the right hand and then just dip off ever so slowly and then loop the left hook around to land to the liver. Charles Oliveira has been stopped with body shots before, and he's been folded over before. I don't actually. I take that back. I don't know if he has been. I'll have to double check that. I don't know if he's been stopped with a body shot, but I know he's been folded by body shots. He's been folded by body shots multiple times. So that's one thing that I am looking for from Michael Chandler. With that low stance, instead of going head hunting, work the body of Charles Oliveira. Now, Oliveira's striking has developed a great deal over time. He's been working at the shooter box, and he loves those like long shots from a distance to force his opponents to shoot on him. As I said, how can I put this? If you look at Oliver, because I don't really want to go into the submissions right now, but I guess I could link the two. Um, Oliveira's preferred submissions, if you look at his record, are guillotines and anacondas. So Chandler needs to watch that front headlock position. In this fight, watch for whenever Oliveira goes for the front headlock position, but Oliveira does get hit. So I'm thinking I'm thinking that Oliveira will potentially use his striking, the long punches, the body kicks, to force Chandler to shoot on him, so he can hook up either a guillotine or his Bronx choke that he likes to do, where he'll lace up the guillotine, but then he will jump over his opponent, so it takes away the entire. I'll talk about that more when I get to the grappling part, but his striking is super frustrating. He's like, I always call Charles Oliveira, especially after his last fight, he is Tony Ferguson 2.0, because he's throwing all these strikes at you and he has no intention of landing every single one of them. As long as some of them get through, as long as the hardest ones get through, he's completely fine. So Chandler needs to get Oliveira's respect early, and he needs to use feints and land hard power shots to stop Oliveira from coming forward. Because Oliveira is going to be in his face the whole time, pressuring him and wanting Oliveira to shoot on him and panic shoot, not get right in there, but to panic shoot so he can lace up the neck. Um, the left hook is my absolute favorite shot to throw. It's my favorite strike to throw in the world. Oliveira uses it very well in that he sneakily uses it not to land a punch, but where he can get you into the tie clinch and then start to work his elbows and his knees. If you watch Charles Oliveira throw a left hook, he kind of glances it around to grab the back of the neck and then pull them into the clinch. So then he can work knees, elbows, get his Muay Thai game going. So I've kind of alluded into it already. So we'll move on to level 2 now. Level 2 being the grappling. Oliveira has a very long neck, and he has 2 guillotine losses on his record already. Chandler could utilize that because something my jiu-jitsu coach always told me, I don't necessarily agree with it, that the guillotine is the wrestler's choke. It's what every wrestler goes to use when they don't know like advanced jiu-jitsu, which I think is a bit disrespectful, but whatever. Um, Chandler, I don't see him submitting Oliveira in this fight. I think he's got too much of a game to fall into any traps that Chandler will set. But I will say, Chandler has an extraordinarily good base, and his top pressure is absolutely suffocating. So he could use those to nullify Oliveira's jiu-jitsu, especially later in the rounds, because I don't believe Oliveira's ever had to go 5 rounds. I think Oliveira's only been in 3 round fights. I don't think he's ever had to go 5 rounds. So if it gets late into the fourth, late into the third, and Oliveira's starting to breathe heavy, starting to, they're both covered in sweat at this point. So it's going to make it a lot trickier for him to get into like any leg lock positions or get any tricky attacks off. Chandler, he could very well level change onto a guillotine or an anaconda, but he's a very aggressive grappler. He will ragdoll someone. It's actually quite impressive to watch because as soon as, let's take side control for example, as soon as he gets into side control, that wrestler mentality kicks in and he's looking to pin your arms to the mat, pin your shoulders down, and just establish complete dominance over you. His style is his wrestling style and his grappling style is based on complete positional dominance. And speaking of positional dominance, his positional awareness as to where you're at is also really, really impressive. He will make slight adjustments, even when he's already in dominant position, to eliminate any avenues of escape. He will bear the weight of his hips down so low and link his ankles with your legs to the point that you have absolutely nowhere to turn. You can't turn out. So that's when he will start to hunt for the rear naked choke. I think if he is going to win by submission, it will be via a rear naked choke. But it's when you look at how he bears his hips down on someone, you can't turn away. There's nowhere to go. He leaves you with absolutely nowhere to run, and you just have to deal with ground and pound, which his ground and pound is like fucking ringing Thor's hammer down on you repeatedly, or give up your neck and get choked. However, if Chandler can't control Oliveira, he will constantly be defending submissions, which is exhausting in its own right. And Oliveira has a whole tool shed. He has a whole tool shed of submissions to work with: calf slices, straight ankle locks, anacondas, guillotines, arm bars. If he hits that arm bar on Michael Chandler that he almost got Tony Ferguson with, that I think he would have tapped Tony Ferguson with any other night, I think that he gets the win via submission if he hits that armbar on Michael Chandler. And Tony Ferguson is a very high level wrestler. I don't like seeing everyone online right now who's kind of discrediting and kind of taking the piss out of Tony. I know it's the funny thing to do to make fun of Tony Ferguson, but he is a very high level wrestler. Kevin Lee is also a very high level wrestler, and Charles Oliveira more than hung in there grappling with those two. I mean, he repeatedly got the body lock and took Tony Ferguson down repeatedly. And as I mentioned before, it's that when it comes to the grappling, I'm looking for Chandler to establish control and Oliveira to hunt from the front headlock position. If I don't think Chandler's going to panic shoot, but if he does, that's what I'm looking for, the guillotine or the anaconda. And if he even works for that Bronx choke where he, like I said, where he goes for the guillotine but he steps over the front of his opponent, Chandler's base, that base that he has a real, Chandler has a very good wrestling base, completely goes away. Completely goes away and gives Oliveira that advantage, but I don't think Oliveira's gonna, that to me there's very little quit, if any quit, in Michael Chandler. I think he will go out before he taps. So let's move on to level 3, which is the other integers. Not very many to discuss here. As I said, Oliveira has more experience in the UFC, but has never done 5 rounds. Michael Chandler has had multiple 5-round fights. Um, Chandler's pace. Chandler, to quote Chael Sonnen, I believe it was Chael Sonnen that said this. He has a way to weaponize pace. He's constantly in your face, constantly making you think. I like to talk about fight brain, fight CPU. He constantly makes your fight CPU overwork. It's constantly wearing, constantly working. So I wonder if that's going to play a factor. Uh, Oliveira to me seems kind of like a no fucks given kind of fighter that if he gets taken down, he's like, fine, let's work here. I have no problem being on the mat with you. If it stays on the feet, I think he's very confident in his striking now, so I don't see that being a problem. Um, so yeah, let's go. Let's just go into my final thoughts and predictions. I think this is going to be a more competitive fight than people are giving it credit for. I think a lot of people are saying, Michael Chandler didn't belong in the UFC to begin with. I am of the mind that I don't believe he should be getting a UFC title fight this early into his run in the UFC, but unfortunately, I don't make those decisions. I am not a matchmaker. I don't own the UFC, so it is not my decision to make. Michael Chandler is a very high level competitor, so he should absolutely be up there. He should absolutely be up there. For me, Charles Oliveira was the rightful number 1 contender to begin with, so I'm cool with this fight. It's a very good fight. I would like. Oh, this is tough because both guys have the lock and key to beat each other in this fight. It'll just be a case of who can implement their strategy most effectively. Um, I think I'm gonna go with Oliveira, and when we do the podcast, I will be making the exact same pick of Charles Oliveira because regardless of his legacy and other promotions, I just think Charles Oliveira is level above, and I don't think Dan Hooker had a very good display. Not to discredit what Michael Chandler did to him, but I don't think that Dan Hooker had a very good display in his last fight for whatever reason. So to me, this is Michael Chandler's first test in the UFC because I don't think he was tested in his last fight. No, again, no disrespect to Dan Hooker, but yeah, I'm gonna pick Charles Oliveira. I'm gonna pick Charles Oliveira by submission. Yeah. Charles Oliveira by submission win. UFC 262 main event preview. I'm going to continue to do these unless people say, Matty, give up, you suck, stop doing these. And so next week, I believe, oh shit, Cody No Love versus Rob Font. Going to be hard to keep my bias out of that one, but we'll do our best. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Please check out which way am I looking here? If you see down here, We have the ONU MMA show. It's the podcast I do with Smoke Jones and Trevor Jones every Wednesdays and Sundays around 9:30 p.m. ish UK time. We're very ever rarely on time, so uh, head over to the Wild Jones Podcast Network YouTube channel. Subscribe there, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live, and we'll see you guys on Sunday to discuss the fights.